By the start of 1970, the landscape of horror had shifted. The classic Gothic monsters were fading into the background, and a new, more cynical era of genre cinema was beginning to take shape. It was a year of transition where the supernatural began to merge with psychological rot, and the traditional safe endings of the past were being replaced by something much bleaker. Tonight, we're looking at 10 overlooked titles from 1970. These aren't the household names that dominated the box office, but the strange, experimental, and often transgressive films that were pushing the genre into darker territory. From occult rituals in the English countryside to the early, stylish blueprints of the Italian Giallo, these are the films that set the tone for the most transformative decade in horror history. These are 10 more overlooked gems from 1970.
The Dunwich Horror, 1970. In the decaying, isolated town of Dunwich, the Whately family harbors a lineage that predates humanity. Wilbur Whately seeks to unlock the gateway to the Old Ones, using forbidden grimoires to summon a force that will rewrite the laws of existence. When he targets a young scholar to serve as the vessel for his ritual, he inadvertently draws the attention of a local occult expert. As the veil between dimensions thins, the town finds itself trapped in a nightmare where sanity is the first casualty. Dean Stockwell delivers a performance that oscillates between seductive charm and chilling inhumanity. He successfully grounds the more outlandish occult elements, making Wilbur feel like a man who genuinely believes he is bringing enlightenment to a small-minded world. Sandra Dee, cast against type, provides the necessary vulnerability, serving as the audience's anchor as the world literally begins to warp around her. Haller, a former art director for Corman's Roger Corman films, clearly prioritized mood over narrative. The film is drenched in shadows and saturated colors, creating an uncanny feeling that succeeds even when the plot becomes fragmented. The practical staging of the occult rituals feels ritualistic and dusty, contrasting sharply with the neon-soaked, hallucinogenic interludes that represent the entity's influence. This is a quintessential gateway film. It isn't a perfect adaptation of Lovecraft. It's far too anchored in its own decade. But it captures the spirit of his work better than most contemporary attempts. For those interested in the history of cosmic horror cinema, it stands as a bold, if flawed, bridge between traditional Gothic haunting and the more abstract surrealist terror that would follow. The Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion, 1970. Nude, the elegant wife of a high-ranking executive, lives a life of stifling privilege until she encounters a mysterious, obsessive stranger. He begins to stalk her, eventually revealing that he possesses photographs detailing her illicit private affairs. What follows is a descent into a nightmare of extortion and manipulation. As the stranger demands she commit increasingly dangerous acts, she discovers that her life, and everyone in it, is a facade waiting to be dismantled. Ercole directs with an emphasis on atmosphere, letting the tension simmer until it boils over into moments of sudden, jagged violence. The script creates a claustrophobic sense of entrapment, where the victim's attempts to escape the blackmail only tighten the noose. The film's power lies in its refusal to offer a clear moral compass. The characters are all varying shades of damaged, and the hero is as compromised as the villain. The cinematography captures the glossy, sterile beauty of the Italian elite, turning their homes into gilded cages. The forbidden photos themselves are never just props. They are the catalyst for a total psychological collapse. When the violence finally erupts, it is jarringly grounded. There is no theatricality here, only the ugly, desperate struggle of people who have run out of options. This is an elegant, highly stylized piece of psychological cinema that serves as a bridge between the classic noir thriller and the more extreme giallo that would soon dominate the market. It captures a specific moment in European genre history where style was just as lethal as a blade. For those who enjoy their suspense drenched in high-fashion paranoia and cold, calculated malice, this remains an essential, chilling watch. 5 Dolls for an August Moon, 1970, a group of ruthless industrialists and their partners gather at a remote, high-end island estate to pressure a scientist into selling his revolutionary industrial formula. When he refuses, The gathering turns deadly. As members of the party are killed, their bodies are stored in a walk-in freezer, wrapped in plastic, and hung like gruesome meat. With no way to leave the island, the survivors are trapped in a deadly game of suspicion and alliance shifting, realizing that the killer is one of their own. Director Mario Bava delivers what is essentially a psychedelic mod-era take on Agatha Christie's 10 Little Indians. The cast is a collection of beautiful people, including genre icons like Edwige Fenech, who turn on each other with cold, calculated efficiency. Because the characters are intentionally unlikable, the film pivots away from human drama and becomes a pure exercise in visual composition and atmosphere. Bava treats the estate as a canvas, using pop art color palettes, elaborate camera movements, and a hypnotic lounge-heavy score to create a sense of artificial, dreamlike dread. The film's most iconic imagery, the bodies lined up in the freezer, turned the murder mystery into a grotesque gallery of high-fashion morbidity. The violence is largely atmospheric. Bava cares far less about the how of the murders and far more about the look of the aftermath. While the plot is admittedly thin and the solution to the mystery is famously arbitrary, the film remains an essential study of Bava's visual mastery. It proves that even when the director is arguably phoning it in regarding the script, his innate ability to frame a scene can elevate a low-budget thriller into a work of pop art. It remains a fascinating relic of the late 1960s/early 70s aesthetic, serving as a direct visual ancestor to the stylish, high-gloss murder mysteries of later decades. Count Dracula, 1970. Franco's adaptation attempts rare fidelity to Bram Stoker's novel after decades of films drifting from the source material. Jonathan Harker travels to a castle in Transylvania as a real estate agent and encounters a count who, true to the book, starts as a haggard, white-mustached old man. As the vampire feeds, he grows progressively younger. After Harker escapes, the count moves his operations to Budapest to hunt Lucy and Mina, prompting Van Helsing to arrive and combat the undead threat. Christopher Lee plays Dracula in what he considered the most faithful version of his career. Unlike his Hammer films, where he was often a silent brute, here he is given the Count's actual literary dialogue. Herbert Lom plays Van Helsing with grim authority, while Klaus Kinski provides a haunting, entirely silent performance as Renfield. The international cast brings a unique flavor to the production, even if the dubbing is occasionally hit or miss. Franco shoots on a minimal budget, using Spanish and Italian locations to approximate Eastern Europe. The makeup effects focus on Lee's rejuvenation, showing him transforming from a decrepit aristocrat back to a youthful predator. The Gothic atmosphere relies on location shooting in actual castles, giving the film a sense of authentic, crumbling grandeur that elaborate studio sets often lack. The low budget is apparent in the technical limitations and pacing, but Lee's dignified performance and Franco's attempt at literary accuracy make it a fascinating watch. It isn't the definitive version of the story, but it remains one of the few films to prioritize Stoker's original vision over the established Hollywood templates. For fans of Christopher Lee, it is an essential look at the Dracula he always wanted to play. The Nude Vampire, 1970. A young man stumbles into a secret society that experiments on human subjects in an attempt to conquer death. Among their captives is a vampire, a pale, silent woman whose history is tied to the group's bizarre, occult scientific rituals. As the protagonist becomes obsessed with her, he finds himself drawn into a world where reality, myth, and desire collide. He isn't just trying to rescue a prisoner. He is trying to navigate a surreal landscape where the border between the living and the dead has been permanently erased. Rollin directs with a lingering, hypnotic eye. He eschews the quick cuts and shocks of the slasher genre, opting for long, fluid takes that force the audience to sit with the discomfort of his imagery. There is a profound sadness to the film's atmosphere, a sense that every character is trapped in a loop of eternal longing, destined to be consumed by the secrets they try so desperately to uncover. The visual language is stark and minimalist. The film relies on the contrast between the sterile, white-tiled environments of the laboratories and the decaying, ivy-covered ruins of the French aristocracy. The music, an avant-garde, haunting blend of electronic tones and ethereal choral work, underscores the feeling of dislocation. It's an auditory mirror to the film's refusal to provide the audience with a conventional, linear way out. The Nude Vampire is a polarizing piece of art house horror. It demands that the viewer abandon their expectations of plot and embrace a more visceral, sensory experience. For those willing to let go of the rules of the monster movie, it offers a haunting look at how the vampire myth can be hollowed out and refilled with the melancholy of a modern, lost generation. Multiple Maniacs, 1970. Imagine a traveling sideshow called The Cavalcade of Perversion that doesn't just promise you a bad time, it threatens to dismantle your entire moral framework. Led by the incomparable Lady Divine, this troupe of Baltimore's most depraved souls lure unsuspecting suburbanites into their trap, only to rob, murder, and desecrate their way through the city. When Divine discovers her boyfriend is cheating, the sideshow becomes a secondary concern. She spirals into a homicidal, cannibalistic fugue state, fueled by religious visions and an absolute, unshakable commitment to being the most repulsive human being alive. In the world of 16mm guerrilla filmmaking, this is the high-water mark of audacity. John Waters didn't just ignore permits and professional standards, he actively weaponized them. Every scene, from the desecrated church interiors to the grimy Baltimore alleyways, feels like a crime scene in the making. The performances by the Dreamlanders Ensemble, David Lochary, Mary Vivian Pearce, and Mink Stoll, are delivered with the kind of unhinged, deadly sincerity that you only get when a group of friends decides that being good is the ultimate sin. The special effects are a glorious, primitive mess. The giant papier-mâché lobster, Lobstora, is perhaps the greatest insult to cinematic quality ever committed to film. The violence is crude, the gore is clearly just paint and corn syrup, and the pacing is a frantic, shrieking descent into madness. It's not trying to be a horror movie. It's trying to be a riot that you can't look away from. Looking back, Multiple Maniacs is a pivotal artifact of the late 60s collapse. It is the sound of the counterculture eating itself. For those who want to understand the origins of the Midnight Movie, this is the essential document. It's a film that demands you laugh at things that should make you weep, and in doing so, it forces you to acknowledge that middle-class values were never anything more than a polite fiction. The Weekend Murders, 1970. This is a quintessential example of the old dark house subgenre being reimagined through the lens of early 70s Italian Giallo sensibilities. Directed by Michele Lupo, the film gathers an estranged, greedy family at a remote mansion to hear the reading of a will, only for them to be picked off one by a masked killer. While it adheres to the classic tropes of the mystery thriller, secret passages, thunderstorms, and a crumbling estate, it infuses them with the distinct, stylish flair of the era, balancing dark comedy with moments of genuine, sleazy tension. What makes this film stand out in a crowded field of similar whodunits is its surprisingly playful, almost irreverent tone. It isn't trying to be a masterpiece of suspense. Instead, it revels in the absurdity of its own premise. The characters are largely unlikable, selfish, and desperate, turning the mansion into a pressure cooker of petty infighting and backstabbing. The pacing is snappy, and the cinematography uses the mansion's Gothic architecture to great effect, creating a sense of claustrophobia that contrasts sharply with the film's more lighthearted, darkly comedic interludes. For those who enjoy the Giallo aesthetic but prefer a narrative that leans more into the mystery game than the visceral slasher-style violence of later entries, this provides an engaging, quintessential slice of 1970 mystery cinema. It's an ensemble piece that relies heavily on the chemistry and the collective toxicity of its cast, making it a perfect pick for viewers who want their suspense seasoned with a generous helping of cynical, tongue-in-cheek humor. It's not revolutionary, but it is a polished, highly entertaining relic of the decade's obsession with the mansion murder formula. Count Yorga, Vampire, 1970. A Bulgarian vampire establishes himself in modern-day Los Angeles, preying on a group of young people who consult him for a seance to contact a deceased mother. After one woman exhibits strange behavior and a craving for rare meat, her friends, including a skeptical doctor, investigate and discover that the sophisticated Count is the real thing. He has brought his coffin, his hulking servant Bruda, and a growing harem of brides to a hilltop mansion. The skeptics become believers too late as Yorga systematically picks them off, leading to a desperate sunset raid on his lair. Director Bob Kellyan delivers a film that famously started as a soft-core erotica project titled The Loves of Count Yorga. It was only after star Robert Quarry read the script and insisted it could be a legitimate horror movie that the nudity was scaled back and the plot was played straight. Quarry plays Yorga with a chilling, predatory charm. He's cultured and intelligent, but capable of animalistic ferocity. The cast, including Roger Perry and Michael Murphy, treats the material with a seriousness that keeps the film from slipping into camp. Shot on a shoestring budget of under $100,000, the film uses real LA locations to create a guerrilla-style sense of dread. The vampire's mansion was a real rented house, and the lack of lighting, due to budget constraints, actually helps build the film's dark and mysterious atmosphere. The violence is surprisingly visceral for 1970, featuring blood drinking and a legendary disturbing sequence involving a vampirized woman eating a kitten. While the film follows classic lore, stakes, crosses, and sunlight, it reinvented the genre by proving that a caped aristocrat could be terrifying in a contemporary setting. Its massive success at the box office, earning over $1 million, helped launch a new wave of modern vampire films and turned Robert Quarry into a temporary rival to Christopher Lee for the title of King of Vampires. Fragment of Fear, 1970. Imagine waking up to the news that your aunt is dead. Now, imagine that as you try to find out who killed her, the world around you starts to erase the evidence that a crime even happened. That is the nightmare facing Tim Brett, a man whose only crime, according to his friends, is that he used to be a drug addict. Forget the cheap jump scares. This is gaslighting turned into a feature film. Directed by Richard C. Sarafian, Fragment of Fear isn't about monsters in the basement. It's about the terrifying realization that your own mind might be the most dangerous place on Earth. David Hemmings plays Tim with a desperate, frantic energy, and every time he gets close to the truth, the people around him, his fiancée, the police, the socialites, they all look at him with a pitying gaze that says, "Are you sure you aren't just having a relapse?" What makes this film work is the ambiguity. The cinematography in the London sequences turns the city into a cold, clinical labyrinth. It uses real locations to make you feel as trapped as Tim. You're never quite sure if he's being hunted by a real shadow organization or if his past is finally catching up to him in the form of a breakdown. It's a brilliant claustrophobic trick that keeps you doubting everything until the final frame. It's a masterclass in psychological tension. If you want a thriller that doesn't just feed you the answer at the end, a movie that leaves you looking over your shoulder long after the credits roll, this is the one. It's the ultimate who can you trust movie, and the answer, quite frankly, is nobody. Blood Mania, 1970. A physician finds himself in a lethal bind when a mysterious blackmailer demands $50,000 to keep quiet about the doctor's history of performing illegal abortions. He becomes entangled with a mentally unstable heiress who is obsessed with him. She decides to help her lover by poisoning her dying father to secure an early inheritance. However, the plan backfires when the will reveals that the entire estate has been left to her estranged younger sister. The film is a quintessential piece of Crown International exploitation, less a traditional horror movie and more a sleazy psychedelic melodrama. The lead, played by Peter Carpenter, who also co-wrote the film, is a fascinatingly weak protagonist. He immediately pivots from the murderous older sister to the wealthy younger one the moment the will is read. Maria de Aragon delivers a high-camp performance as the jilted daughter, spiraling from a manipulative socialite into a completely unhinged murderess. While the film is light on gore for most of its runtime, the blood in the title finally arrives in a bizarre and nasty climax. The production is draped in 1970s grime, featuring drug-fueled seduction scenes, nightmare wide-angle cinematography, and a jazzy, psychedelic score. It captures a specific moment in the drive-in circuit where the line between soap opera and slasher was incredibly thin. The mystery is secondary to the spectacle of moral decay. Shot in a mansion formerly owned by Bela Lugosi, the film uses its authentic Los Angeles locations to build an atmosphere of claustrophobic greed. It is a slow-burn exploitation piece that concludes with a shocking, blood-soaked finale that finally justifies its lurid title.
Thanks for watching. If you have your own memories of these films or a hidden gem we missed, let us know in the comments below. We're building this collection together, one film at a time. And remember, always be kind and rewind, because every movie is somebody's favorite.